Nostalgia and Brat have both eclipsed with two of the biggest moments of pop culture history. However, I wanted to compare and contrast these albums and see what they can tell us about the times that we're living in and what the future at the end of the decade might hold for pop music at large. Now, to her credit, Future Nostalgia was such a huge cultural moment in pop music, but also at the time because it was released during the pandemic. But ultimately, what Dua Lipa wanted to accomplish was creating a nostalgic pop and disco record that uses electronic influences, things in music that she once grew up with as a child. And it is unfortunate that it was released during the time it was because truly this album was meant to dance and be in clubs. But the moment in which it was released is why it's so significant because essentially Dua Lipa was able to bring the club to people's homes during the pandemic. And again, as I previously said, this record was meant to dance in the clubs, but because of just the different restrictions, people didn't particularly, when it came out, have the freedom to do so. So Dua Lipa was able to give people sort of this like comfort and this idea of disco liberation while they were still experiencing such a traumatic thing with so many lives that had been lost at the time. And one of the more interesting things that I find about this record is that even as it's referred to as a disco liberation pop record, it doesn't really, in terms of lyricism, have things that Dua Lipa is expressing she's going through at the time. It's more so just a feel-good album, something that people were able to just dance to and forget about their problems, which was absolutely necessary during such a traumatic time in this world. And while it is one of the greatest albums of the 2020s, I think it also represents what we needed at that time. Now let's look at Brat. Now, Brat, in comparison to Future Nostalgia, was also a huge moment by someone else who comes from the UK, Charlie XCX, but it goes more personal and it's more deeper. Because unlike its predecessor, Future Nostalgia, Brat was able to be danced to in clubs, and people were able to feel what Charlie was feeling. And unlike Future Nostalgia, where most of the records are up-tempo feel-good vibes, Brat, it sort of contrasts the electronic hyper-pop space with the things that Charlie is experiencing on the records. Girls Look Confusing, I think, is a really good example of how Charlie is talking about just her experiences of comparing herself to someone else in the music industry while also having a record that is focused on electronics and being able to sort of share that with the fans. That's also why the remix, which I love so much with Lorde, was so significant because it was Lorde's response to everything that Charlie had stated that she was experiencing and feeling about at the time with their time shared in the music industry. But I think that's what's so significant about both of these albums being what they are at this time, because Future Nostalgia, while it is a feel-good record, it doesn't have the lyrical depth that Brat has. And Brat sort of explores the experiences that Charli XCX is going through in girlhood, which a lot of women could also, relate to. And before you guys try to say I'm downplaying Dua Lipa's record, I'm not at all. I'm not saying that the lyricism sort of has to be deep in order for it to be a huge pop record. I actually think it's incredible.